Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Regarding the concept of the hereafter, the misconception I'd like to discuss today relates to this persistent notion which is found in the Quran. And of course, if it is found in the Quran, it is bound to be true. It says that there are certain criminals, certain sinners, for whom there is eternal hell, eternal damnation. And therefore, people, of course, raise the question and they think that if the Almighty is all merciful, He's all forgiving, then how can this eternal hell punishment be explained in the light of God's mercy? Now, of course, this has become a cause of a lot of misconception. There are two extremes in this view as well. People think that eternal damnation or eternal hell, of course, is something which, if the Quran has said, is bound to be given to certain criminals. And on the other hand, people think that this is against the mercy of the Almighty. So it needs to be understood that we have to examine this issue in the light of the Quran and see what exactly are the implications. Now, this eternal damnation or eternal hell has been prescribed for certain criminals, certain sinners in the Quran. Thus, for example, people who deliberately associate with God, who commit polytheism, for them eternal hell is prescribed. Similarly, people who are not fair in the shares of inheritance, for them too this eternal hell is prescribed. And we also know that there are similar other crimes for which such a punishment has been prescribed. And now the question arises that if it has been stated, then why should there be any exception to this? And of course, we have to accept what the Quran says. Now, as I said, as I've been saying in some of my lectures, that it is essential that whenever we derive a conclusion from the Quran regarding a particular issue, we must collate and collect all verses which relate to this issue so that we can have a complete picture. Now, there is a certain verse in Surah Hud, which I'll just read out to you, which actually gives a new picture, a new dimension to this whole affair. And that whole dimension needs to be understood because it actually modifies this concept of eternal damnation or eternal hell. Now, as far as this verse is concerned, this is found in Surah Hud, actually these are two verses, verse 106 and verse 107. And the words of these verses are, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ شَقُوا فَفِي النَّارِ لَهُمْ فِيهَا زَفِيرٌ وَشَهِيقٌ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا مَا دَامَتِ السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ رَبُّكَ إِنَّ رَبَّكَ فَعَّالٌ لِمَا يُرِيدُ. So simple translation reads, then the damned shall be cast into the fire. Here they will groan and scream, and shall abide there forever, as long as the heavens and the earth of that world exist, unless your Lord thinks otherwise, your Lord ordains otherwise. Indeed, your Lord is able to accomplish what He wants to. So the words here, illa ma sha'a rabbuk, after khalidina fiha, which means that, there shall be eternal hell for them, except if your Lord wants something else, which point to the fact that as long as the Almighty has some other intentions, He shall of course implement them. So if the Almighty has some other intentions regarding these people who have been condemned for eternal hell, then they shall be stand fulfilled, and no one will be able to stop the Almighty from implementing His will. Now the question arises, if there is an exception, if God says that they shall remain there in eternal hell, but if the Almighty wants, then of course the matter shall be different. Illa ma sha'a rabbuk. Then what exactly does this mean? And is this not a violation of the principle of justice which is found in the Quran? Now, first of all, it needs to be understood that if the Almighty wants, as these verses say, illa ma sha'a rabbuk, then of course He can reduce the punishment of this eternal hell. For example, He can give a different punishment which has a lesser period of time. Similarly, if the Almighty burns those criminals away and reduces them to ashes, then this again would be a form of reduction. Of course, we can clearly understand this, and this can happen as far as these verses are concerned. However, the next question which arises is that will this not be against the justice of the Almighty? Then, if the Almighty has promised eternal doom for such people, then how can He forgive them? Again, here it needs to be understood that as far as the promise of eternal doom is concerned, it is primarily a threat. It is primarily a threat. It is something which the Almighty has threatened such criminals with, and it's not a promise in the true sense of the word, the way promises are made. So therefore, if this threat is reduced by the Almighty, there's some reduction in this threat. As I said, two very clear forms of this reduction are, One of them is, of course, that some lesser form of punishment is given, and the other form of punishment, the other form of reduction is that such criminals are burnt to ashes. Then both of these are forms of reduction. So, as I said, the question which could next arise is that will this not be against the justice of the Almighty? So, as I said, the answer again to this question is that this shall not be against the justice of the Almighty, because this is primarily a threat for eternal damnation or eternal doom. It is not a promise that he has to abide by in all circumstances. He can reduce his threat whenever he wants to. His mercy can, of course, cause him to reduce his threat, and this would not be against the principle of justice. So, in a nutshell, we can say that eternal hell and eternal damnation, which is prescribed for certain criminals in the Quran, is, of course, a concept that is clearly enshrined in the Quran. But these particular verses of Surah Hud clearly spell out that there is this element of mercy found, and the Almighty, in all probability, shall reduce the punishment of such criminals. And of course, the forms of reduction which I've just alluded to could be different. I've just alluded to two principal forms, and this would not be against the justice of the Almighty also. So, in a nutshell, we can say that eternal hell or eternal doom, which is generally found in some verses of the Quran, if this is interpreted in the light of these particular verses, it would clearly say that even such criminals should expect that the Almighty would forgive them or reduce their punishment after a specific period of time. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات.